All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Screen Review. My name is Megan.
And hi, I'm Dina. Before we start, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Boca Tribune. And if you want to rewatch this show after, we're on YouTube as well.
Yes. Today we're going to be talking about The Florida Project, a movie released in 2017. It's rated R, and it runs for about an hour and 55 minutes. So as always, we're going to go ahead and just give our general thoughts of the movie for those who have not seen the movie. And then we're going to jump into more of the spoiler-heavy type review discussion. So I guess first things first, Dina, what did you think of the movie?
So I will say this movie does get me crying every time. It's a very emotional movie, I think, personally. Megan doesn't cry at movies, but I do.
I don't cry. Yeah, I didn't cry.
And, I'm not saying that I cry at every movie when it's sad, but, this one is, genuine tears every time I watch it. And overall, beautifully shot movie. The premise is amazing. As you know, I love these, kind of period drama type movies, where it's just, a section of someone's life, you know what I mean? Not really just a classic plot point type thing. And acting's so good because these were 6-year-old kids and they were just incredible at what they were doing. So those are my general thoughts. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree to pretty much everything that you said. I know earlier you mentioned the saturation of certain of the entire movie, basically, to where everything looked a little bit brighter and all of that was really, really interesting. And I agree also with what you said about how it wasn't a traditional movie, it wasn't kind of oh no, there's something we need to solve, in a resolution moment. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a very real, interesting movie. Definitely, I don't know. I can't say really enough great things about it. This is a movie that I genuinely enjoyed. Usually I have a few critiques, but this one I really don't.
Me neither.
I liked it. Also, I love Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe did a great job. He always does.
For sure. So I think that's all for spoilers. Do you have anything else to say?
Not really, no. I mean, just you should watch it. I think I watched it on Netflix. I don't remember if it was Netflix or Hulu. I honestly don't remember. I think it was Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah, so watch it on Netflix if you have it, and then come back. We're going to jump into the more spoiler-type review now. So Dina, kind of spoilers. As always, we're just going to a little bit go into the discussion of the movie. So I guess, I don't know, want to take us to the beginning or somewhere, wherever you feel like, honestly.
So I guess we'll start from the beginning. We start with, the first scene you kind of see is, these kids yelling for each other, their names. You see the hotel that they live in, which is the Magic Castle in something. And it's in Orlando, obviously, Florida Project. And you kind of see these kids yelling for each other, causing a ruckus around this hotel, yelling, screaming, running, whatever. It's the first day of summer, first week or beginning of summer, and they start spitting on some lady's car. And you get introduced to this new lady. Could not remember her name for the life of me, but we're just going to call her the grandma. And that's where we get introduced to her, and then her 2 grandchildren. One of them, we don't know their name. The other one, Jancy, who befriends our main character, Mooney. All 6-year-old kids. There's Mooney's mom, Haley, and then there's also Mooney's friends, Dickie and Scooty, right?
Yeah, and then Scooty's mom, her name is Ashley, I believe, and Ashley and Haley are kind of best friends, and they all live at the Magic Castle Motel, except for Jancy. And I looked it up. Her name is Stacy, the grandmother.
Okay. So
I had no idea.
Across the street, right? At a different hotel across the street or motel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a different motel. I mean, it looks similar enough, but it's, you know, a little short jog away from one another.
Right. So basically this whole movie is just like these kids kind of having their summer of fun, you know, they're causing a ruckus, running around, they get in constant trouble. Something we can both agree. What is his name? William Dafoe, right? Your actor that you liked a lot.
It's Willem Dafoe. It's not William. Sorry. No, you're fine. It's like an interesting name. Yeah.
Willem Dafoe. He was definitely incredible. He plays Bobby, who's like our hotel manager, and he kind of has this like kind of protective streak over these kids because a lot of kids live in this motel. You know, and something interesting Megan and I were talking about earlier is that this hotel or motel is right outside of Disney, like literally right outside of Disney. I mean, again, I don't know the directions in Orlando. I don't, you know, I'm not native. I don't know the geography there, but, you know, I could tell there was like points where you could see that they were on Seven Dwarfs Lane, which if you've ever been to Orlando, majority, the closer you get to Disney, the funnier, you know, the street names are because they're named after Disney characters and such. So you can see how close they are to Disney, these 6-year-old kids, but you know, they're living in a situation where they cannot go to Disney. And it's like this kind of, I guess, metaphor in a way where it's like, you know, Disney, happiest place on earth, the most magical place on earth, where you see all these kids going and these kids can't go, but they live right there. It's just like a very cruel joke.
Yeah, it is. I think that a lot of the descriptions that I saw of this movie before watching it is they all said they live in the shadow of Disney. And I thought that was a really like, just a good way of putting it, I would say. Because it's just so accurate. I mean, these kids, they live right next to Disney, like you were saying, and they just, you know, they're spending their summer vacation however that they can without spending any money, without doing anything. So mostly, I mean, the story kind of follows Mooney, Jancy, and Scooty primarily because at one point Dickie and his father leave the motel. They move to New Orleans or somewhere. And so a majority of the movie kind of follows those 3 kids, and they run around and they're just, you know, they're being little kids. They do everything that other little kids do, except, you know, they just live in this little motel and they, you know, they can't go to Disney like the other kids. They can't do all these things. So a lot of the times it's just shots of them walking around. You know, they're walking past like gift shops and kind of like quirky looking little establishments. Like they go to like this ice cream little shop, but it's in the shape of an ice cream cone. Like it's very like Disney, the way that things look around there.
It's real, those places.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So like, again, this movie, I really like what they did because it was shot in Florida, which was cool because typically movies are like, oh yeah, like this was filmed in New York City, but it's like actually like a set like in LA or something. Like it's actually filmed in Florida, which is really cool. And just the whole thing was kind of sad to watch because at one point I know that at one point we were talking. It was Jancy, the little girl's birthday, and so what they did for her birthday is they sat kind of in front of this little lake and they sang happy birthday to her. It was Haley and Mooney, and they sang happy birthday to her while they were watching like the Magic Kingdom, like 10 or 8 p.m. fireworks show, whatever it is. But they weren't at Disney; they were just watching it from afar.
Yeah, and that was definitely really emotional. I think something about this movie is that, like, it feels so real. Again, like, piggybacking off of that whole, like, it's filmed in Florida, which is cool. It's also the fact that we were discussing earlier also that the actress who plays Haley, which is Mooney's mom, she isn't an actress. Like, the director, Sean Baker, I believe, right? That's his name?
Yeah.
He found her, like, on Instagram, and they said, oh, my God, like, she fits the image that we want so much. And so I just think that makes the movie feel even more real. Another thing is the little girl who plays Mooney. Her acting is so incredible. Like, it feels so real. Like, I almost want to search. I probably should have, but I almost want to search, like, did they do something to make her, you know, like, have these emotions? Because, you know, a lot of time, like, babies on shows, they'll, like, I don't know, you know, I don't know what they'll do, but they'll do something to make them like act a certain way, or they'll have to retake shots a bunch of times. And actually, I feel as though I could be wrong. I watched an interview once where they said like she got yelled at by her mom before this one scene at the very end where she's crying, which is like the scene that really gets me basically right before she's about to be taken away from her mom from CPS, which, you know, obviously it's going to happen in this movie. It's kind of set up to be that way. I feel like, you know, you kind of figure it out. Right before she's being taken away, she cries like this really emotional cry, which Megan heard me multiple times say that it really got me. Like, it really, really gets me because it's such like this like pure childlike cry. And like, I think I read somewhere that like her mom yelled at her before that, which just makes it all the better, I guess, because it just felt so authentic. Anyways,
cry. You're fine.
It gets me.
It was really good. It was really, really genuine. And I think another kind of interesting point of the movie was this like deterioration of friendship between Haley and Ashley, which is Scooty's mom again. I thought that was really interesting because Dina and I were talking about it earlier. And I really liked how you said that kind of this was used to show that, in a sense, they are still kids. Like, they're both very young mothers. They're doing their best. Like, Haley doesn't have a job officially. Ashley's working full time at like some diner. They're just doing their best. They're kind of living week to week, paycheck to paycheck in a sense. And so it's just, I don't know. It's really interesting because I guess kind of the reason that they stopped being friends, and again, spoilers as always, but the reason that they stopped being friends is because Mooney and Scooty and Jancy like burned down this building for no reason. I would say that's kind of, it's a random scene that happens again, seemingly for no reason. And so then it's almost one day to the next, Scooty all of a sudden is not hanging out with Mooney every single day. They're not hanging out, in Mooney's little motel room with Haley. Like, they're not doing all these things anymore. And so it's very interesting to watch happen because it seems like so petty. Like, because then of course, Haley storms over to the diner and like, sits down and orders everything on the menu and makes Ashley really work, at being a server. It just seems very petty between the two of them, and they never talk it out. They never explain it. And so I don't know. I just liked what you had to say about that, how it kind of shows that they are still, doing their best and young.
Right. And so it's interesting because, you're watching the movie mostly from Mooney's perspective, from a 6-year-old girl's perspective. So we were talking about how the colors in the movie, it's very like saturated because like, a 6-year-old sees the world so much, with so much more ignorance, kind of like ignorance is bliss type thing. And so it looks so much brighter to her. And so that's like her point of view. We're seeing it from a 6-year-old perspective in this kind of situation that they're in, where they're living week by week. And then although we don't see it from Haley's perspective necessarily, we see it unravel. You know what I mean? We see her relationship with her best friend kind of unravel over this very petty thing. And, you were saying how it's like their mothers, like they should have, still let their kids play together. But again, like they are still young mothers and they themselves are figuring it out. So they're treating it not like, oh, my kid's in danger. Well, they are, in one way, they are caring about their kids, but in another way, they're also caring about themselves and how like, oh, my friend did something bad to me. Like, I'm not going to talk to her anymore because like her daughter did this to my son and blah, 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 like a very petty teenage type drama, Yeah. So I just think it's interesting to see like how you see both like a 6-year-old's perspective, and you also just see this perspective from a young mother who you think is just like you see her as a mother, but then at the end of the day, she's still like probably like 21 at this point. So it's just like very interesting to see it like that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I do think that's a really interesting dynamic that they have. And I also kind of want to point out another thing, because obviously, Haley is driven to prostitution towards the end of the movie to kind of make her money and rent, because it's kind of been shown at this point in the movie that she lost her job recently or something, or she was fired, something along those lines. She's just not bringing in any money, and so she's kind of having to resort to this. And, I think it's just crazy that the pictures that she uses to kind of promote this are pictures that Mooney took of her. Like, she kind of says, like photo shoot, like they both put on like bikinis and then they take pictures of each other. But the difference is that Haley's using these images for something, illegal.
Very inappropriate.
Yeah, inappropriate is kind of, a better way.
Something that should not involve a 6-year-old.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not.
So, which again, kind of goes off of Megan said earlier today, how you watch an interview with Sean Baker, the director, and he said he wanted to depict Mooney and Haley's relationship as more of like a sister friendship, you know what I mean? And so I think that is like a clear depiction of how their relationship is not as much mother and daughter as much as like sister and sister. And I was also saying earlier about how like in this movie it's kind of hard to really hate Haley at all, because like in a lot of situations like they were in, where you would have thought that Mooney would have been completely neglected, you know what I mean? But Haley still, at the end of the day, when she would go out, she would never leave Mooney alone. Well, she did on some occasions. She did let a 6-year-old walk around on the highway by herself. But, you know, like if at nighttime, for example, when Haley would go out with Ashley, her friend, before they, you know, got in their petty fight, she would, you know, leave Mooney with like a babysitter or like, you know, a friend to take care of her. And so, and like, you know, she would like watch over Mooney. She didn't not feed Mooney. She didn't like abuse Mooney. You know what I mean? So she still cared for her. It's just not in a necessarily good environment, so to say, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, kind of when you're watching this movie almost, and I think this also came out of that Sean Baker interview that I watched. He says that, you know, you watch the movie, you feel bad for Mooney, you care about Mooney, you want what's best for her, but you see kind of this path that she's headed down with Haley, where essentially like a lot of their mannerisms, a lot of the language that they use, a lot of the things that they do are very, very similar kind of inherently, to where, you know, of course, like I'm sure I don't know if you heard the term modeling, but essentially like a mother has to like model behaviors, or, you know, family has to model behaviors for their child. So like, for example, if it's eating healthy food, if it's exercising, anything like that, you want to kind of be the model for your child so they kind of pick up on those behaviors. And so Haley is modeling this type of behavior to Mooney that's just probably, I hopefully say, you know, not the greatest behavior that you want. And so Sean Baker was kind of saying that you see Mooney heading down this path where inevitably she will be just like Haley, you know, maybe not doomed per se to like the exact same life or anything, but at least in the way that she speaks and presents herself will be kind of almost impossible to step out of.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like a thing that comes from families, you know, from probably Haley before that, you know, she probably had a similar experience as Mooney. And then before that, you know, it's like one of those things. So I guess, you know, it's kind of a break in the pattern, you could say, but not necessarily, because at the end she's taken away by CPS. And although we don't know, did she go back to Haley? Did she not? It can kind of be inferred that like that's it for her, you know, her life at the hotel. So, you know, you never know what will happen to her next. And like, I would like to, you know, we're talking about the relationships, I guess, to go away from like Haley, Mooney, and like their friends. We can kind of go into Bobby, would be a very good plot point to go into. So Bobby is like this manager played by Willem Dafoe. And he's like the manager of this motel. And, you know, he kind of has this, like, he sees these kids as a nuisance, but at the same time, he sees them as like someone he should take care of, I think.
It seems that he really cares for them, like throughout the whole movie, little things that he does. Like, for example, when they're all playing hide and seek, like, you know, he lets the kids hide underneath his desk. You know what I mean? Like, it's little things like that.
And then big things, like there was this very creepy man walking up to all of the kids at the hotel who were playing outside, and Bobby saw it, and he was like painting the side of the building, and he like completely dropped it because he was freaking out. And he basically beat up this guy and was like, please leave, like I will report you to the police. And like that was like a very also emotional scene. So, you know, you kind of got to see that like Bobby isn't like some inhumane, like I keep to myself type of person, which like I would like to hope that most people, if they see a situation like that, would do something. But, you know, that's not necessarily, you know, in the environment they're in, it's not necessarily like that would happen, right? So I thought that was a very good scene to kind of show his character. But we were talking and we were thinking about who called DCF or CPF, whatever, on Mooney and Haley. So at first, we both thought that it was Ashley, which was Haley's friend, who's Phoebe's mom.
But also kind of to that point, it's like the movie almost leads you to believe that it is Ashley.
Right, exactly. They got in a fight, like a fist fight. Like Haley punched Ashley at one point. And you really think that, but we kind of talked about it earlier. And now we're both kind of thinking maybe it was Bobby because, you know, right when Haley started her whole prostitution, you know, going to very inappropriate ways to get money, you know, Bobby started to get suspicious. Like, how are you paying the rent so quickly? Like, I know you don't have a job. I see you in your pajamas all day throughout the day. Who's watching your child? Blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, at the end, you were mentioning, Megan, that it was kind of suspicious that Bobby didn't go in and do anything when DCF came and helped Mooney and Haley. So that made me think, like, oh my God, wait, was it Bobby who called DCF, you know, or CPS? So
yeah, it was kind of like my thought process behind thinking that you might be right and that it might be Bobby actually, because he even threatened Haley, and she's the only guest that would have to do this, to where every single visitor that's going to come to your little room has to sign in, and they have to leave their ID with the front desk the whole time. And obviously,
right.
If anyone's going to your little motel room or your apartment or anything for like inappropriate reasons or illegal reasons, they're not going to be super inclined to leave their ID at the front desk with the manager. They're probably not going to want to do that. And so, I mean, that kind of also plays into the point where Haley, freaks out and he kind of yells at him. I mean, definitely yells at him. It's a pretty massive fight between the two of them, because I guess in a sense, he's denying Haley the way that she's making money and the way that she's able to pay rent so quickly and so efficiently. But it's also like, I don't know. That's why this movie is so interesting, because it's impossible to see, who's right and who's wrong.
It's also impossible to see what's actually happening, because you have to keep in mind you're seeing this from the perspective of a 6-year-old. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
so
that's true.
It's like it kind of makes the details blurry on purpose, because like a 6-year-old isn't going about like, what is Bobby's relationship with his wife and children? You know what I mean? And so it kind of makes the mystery more entertaining in a way. It makes it less of a mystery, because like again, with movies like these, it's just kind of like a start and an end. Like it's just a period in someone's life. It's a period in Mooney's life. So we don't really know any backstory or after story, I guess you could say. So it's just very interesting. And I would like to get into like near the end.
Yeah, I want to get to the ending now.
Yeah, so the first time CPS is called kind of freaks out Haley and Mooney, mostly Haley, obviously, really freaks her out. And so, they kind of, I think that was around the time she got in a fight with Bobby, right? And with Ashley. And so, the next day or something like that, Mooney and Haley go to a continental breakfast at some really fancy Disney hotel resort, like the ones with the Mickey Mouse waffle makers, the ones I'm talking about, like those really nice ones. And so, there's this really awkward scene when they're doing it. You kind of see throughout the movie, like being the 6-year-old that Mooney is, she loves sweets, you know what I mean? Like she loves eating and she thinks it's so much fun, blah, blah, blah. And so there's this whole, like, I would say like it was a minute, but it was just such like an awkward minute, maybe even like 30 seconds, honestly. But like it was just like an awkward kind of like very elongated period of time. You were just looking at Mooney eating her breakfast, saying, "Oh, it's so good. I want to come here all the time." Like just casual talk. And then for a split second, you pan to Haley, and she's just so like, what's the word you used when we were talking about this earlier? Like,
I would think deadpan.
Deadpan. Yeah, she was just so like deadpan. Like she was just watching her like, yeah, like you're eating. Like she wasn't eating anything. And so that was essentially their last meal, because after that, CPS or DCF, which is apparently like the Florida Department of Child and Family Services, I think it's specific for Florida. It's called the DCF. They come and they take Mooney away from Haley, and Haley the whole time is like very, again, like you said, deadpan. And then Mooney she doesn't freak out at first. They tell her like, oh, you're just going to stay somewhere for a bit. Like you're going to stay for a while. Like there's going to be toys, blah, 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 the whole game. And something I thought that was really interesting is that like those officers, they didn't really show their face. You know what I mean? Because again, it's from the perspective of a 6-year-old girl. So they didn't really like show their face. It was just Mooney, and then like they would kneel down, or like you would only see their profile. It kind of reminded me of like Powerpuff Girls, which sounds really weird. I don't know if you ever watched it, where they never showed about adults because like they were kids, so like they never showed their faces because they weren't tall enough. It's kind of like that, where it's like she's a kid, so she's not really like paying attention to these faces around her. She's overwhelmed. She's being taken away from her mom, and her first request was, "Can I say bye to my friend Scooty?" And like that's when I already started to get emotional. It was just a lot. And she like hugged him and high-fived him. And then Ashley hugged her too and was like, "Bye, sweetie." Like it was a really cute scene. And then Scooty, being the 6-year-old he is like, "My mom told me you're going to another family." And then that's when Mooney starts freaking out. And so we start seeing this like parallel where like the officers are going to Haley and they're like, "Can you please tell your child to calm down? Like we need your help." And she was like, "You want me to help you take away my daughter?" Which understandable from Haley's perspective. Like that's like so hard to do. I can't even imagine a situation like that. So you kind of see these parallels of like Mooney like fighting off these officers, as well as Haley fighting off these officers and freaking out and like losing their minds and hitting, which again, earlier goes to what you were saying about the modeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like they were both just like fighting off these officers, and it was really emotional. And that's when Mooney runs away. And then we see her go to Jancy's across the street. And that's when she has that really emotional crying scene I was talking about that really made me emotional, like really emotional, because it was just like such like a genuine child like cry. And then do you want to take the last scene that with the iPhone camera?
Yes,
I can.
Mm-hmm. So yes, an interesting thing, and I believe Sean Baker has actually made an entire other full-length feature film shot entirely on an iPhone before. Mm-hmm. And so in this kind of last scene, as Dina said, it's like almost like a statement being like, haha, like I shot a good movie on an iPhone. He switches from, I think it was like a 35 millimeter camera to an iPhone camera quality. And these, two little girls, Jancy and Mooney, run away together. They're holding hands and they run out of the parking lot. You kind of see them going across the, I don't know, I guess side. You see how you get closer to Disney and they have the, like the electrical like poles. You know what I'm trying to say? The electrical poles. They're the shape of Mickey Mouse. I don't know what they're called. I don't know why I can't think of that right now. Yeah, so you see that. Then you see the monorails. They're going through like Disney parking lots. They run through all these things, and eventually, they end up at Cinderella Castle. But because it's shot on an iPhone, it's very like shaky and jumpy, and it almost seems kind of like strobed in a sense. I would say like it was very interesting. I didn't know that it was shot on an iPhone until I looked it up later. I thought it was just like an effect they put on after, but no, it was very interesting. And a lot of people have kind of said that the reason that this was done was to portray that it was all happening in like Mooney's mind. Like obviously, they didn't get into Disney, like they don't have tickets. Everyone knows how strict Disney is, Disney is with the tickets and collecting all of that. So obviously this was kind of something they had this dream of escaping, of, Mooney not having to go to that. Sorry, Dina.
So emotional. Like I can't.
It was emotional. Yeah. But yeah, they had this dream of escaping, like, escaping the life that they had been living, living in poverty, like being in the shadow of Disney World. Mooney didn't obviously want to leave with the DCF and go, live with another family. At the end of the day, of course she loves her mom. Like, of course she does. She's not going to want to leave her, So it was really sad. And I will say that the scene where Mooney is crying to Jancy, she's like, it was a lot because, she was like fumbling over her words, like little kids, like they try to catch their breath when they're crying. Yeah, sorry, Dina's going to cry.
And,
but
the sound of the cry, like I feel like every like toddler or like child under the age of 5 like has this like same cry, same laugh. That's like so childlike, and like it was just so emotional. And like I think with that scene, it kind of shows their innocence, where they're just kind of like, they kind of realize that the world is real and Disney World is kind of like this, like they've always lived near it and they've always kind of idolized it, but they always knew it was like unreachable for them. And in that moment, they were just like these 2 6-year-old girls who just wanted to like go to Disney, like
run through Disney.
So much,
it was a lot, and that's the thing. I think that's what Sean Baker kind of wanted of this movie. I mean, he said of this movie he wants the viewer to kind of see this movie, watch it, want Mooney to be able to go to Disney and enjoy life and do all these things. And after you kind of walk out of the theater, walk out of, your living room or something, wherever you're watching this movie, he wants you to think that this is a real thing that happens. Like, if you even just look up like the Florida Project, you'll find articles written about, little 6-year-old girls who live in motels right outside Disney World. Like, this is not an abnormal thing that's just like a dramatization or anything. Like, this is extremely real, these kinds of things that happen.
Yeah, and I'm very happy they made a movie about it, and it's not this like taboo subject. And as people from Florida, we can attest that it's definitely real. If you ever go to Orlando and you just step a second outside of the Orlando resorts and whatnot, you will see situations like that with your own eyes, and it's a lot to take in, and it's very sad. And again, I just cry thinking about it, but it's just this movie about a 6-year-old girl who just wants to be a 6-year-old girl and go to Disney World. And
it was definitely, overall a really good movie. I like how it wasn't, overdone in a sense,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So I think that's all that I have for the movie. Do you have anything else, really?
No, that's all I have about this amazing movie.
All right,
So
well,
before we end,
no, go ahead.
Before we end, I just want to mention again, follow us at Boca Tribune on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can rewatch the show if you watch the movie, watch it back, on YouTube, Facebook Live, and IGTV. So,
yep, and yes, come join us next week. We're going to be watching, I believe, Spotlight. So come back for that.
Bye.
Bye.